Oberlin attracted me for a number of reasons. I think it started with my college counselor at UWC recommending it for me. It's a small school, and I did always want to go to a smaller school. I didn't really want to drown in several, like thousands and thousands of students. I wanted to have that opportunity to get close to my professors, and to kind of have a deeper connection to a small community. Oberlin is a very small college town. It's not New York City. It's not, Chicago. It's really just tiny. So there was a lot of opportunity to work with community groups. I think that was a major part in my decision. It's also one of the first schools that allowed people of color and women to go to college, and that was something, a big social justice school, which Oberlin is, that really attracted me to the place. And then I knew that it was famous for being a really good school for people interested in environmental studies as well as creative writing, which is something I thought I would do at the time. I really thought I was going to be a poet. So that was why I chose Oberlin, and it ended up being one of the top schools that I got into, and I decided to go. Yeah.
So what's unique about the Oberlin experience? Of course, we keep hearing about Oberlin being a very liberal school and the student body being very engaged and very vocal about changes that they want in the community, or generally just interested in all the change that they could bring about. How was your experience, and sort of did it match the stereotype that we all hear of?
Well, I think, it definitely is a very liberal school. It's a liberal arts school, and it is very focused on social justice. The student body is very passionate about social issues, whether it's like union workers, or it's the Nexus pipeline, or it's talking about racism in our community. I think Oberlin students don't want to just sit in a classroom and learn. They want to apply what they learn in classrooms and use it and to affect positive change in their community. So I think that liberalism sometimes gets a bad rap, creating snowflake students who don't have any real understanding of the world. But I think there are certain students or certain groups on campus that may be a little more towards that edge, but there are also so many groups that are doing so much good work and really just participating in a way that creates positive change, which is something that is a goal for Oberlin students. So yeah, sometimes we can be a little too liberal, sometimes we make some mistakes, but I think overall our heart is in the right place.
Fascinating. So I know you were a busy bee at Oberlin. So what are the few things that you discovered that you wanted to commit to a lot more in terms of activities and not just academics? We'll talk about academics next.
Yeah, so two of the major things that I participated in at Oberlin, one was the school newspaper, which is the Oberlin Review. It's the paper of record. It's actually the only paper in all of Oberlin. So it takes itself kind of seriously in reporting the news that's happening in Oberlin. I started out as an arts and culture editor, and then I became managing editor for the last 2 years. The other big avenue that I chose to insert myself in at Oberlin was research. I did a lot of research first with a professor. I worked on migration and resilience research with Professor Rumi Shaman, which will hopefully culminate in a book at some point, COVID willing. And I also did honors research in my final year. I graduated with high honors in environmental studies. So research became a huge part of my experience. And over the summers, I was also participating in different research with different groups.
Fantastic. I think the newspaper is an interesting topic that I want to delve deeper on. There aren't many students I've interviewed who have been managing editors of a student of record for the area, not just the college students body. So I know they're very smart. The stereotype is that the very smart kids get to do this, and it's. But what is the day-to-day job like to run a newspaper?
So there are 3 senior staff positions at the Oberlin Review. I was the managing editor, and then there were 2 editors-in-chief who were more in charge of the content and daily reporting that we would collect and then publish. We were a weekly newspaper, but it was an everyday type of thing, communicating with senior administrators, with faculty, with staff, with everybody, students. The managing editor was more the long game kind of job, in which it was looking at budgeting and financing, and hiring, firing, what were all the teaching new people who were coming in, new writers, how to write, what our style was, things like that, and overall functioning of our production team. Overall, it was 33 students that I was kind of like banding together every week to produce a newspaper. So I think I learned some of the most important both soft skills and practical skills as managing editor for the Oberlin Review. And I managed a $77,000 budget at the end of this year, which was a huge deal for me.
It's fantastic. In terms of controversies during the time you were a managing editor, of course, the world has seen too many. But what do you think were the most difficult, challenging times for you during those 2 years of managing the newspaper?
I think I was not managing editor when the Gibson's thing happened, which was in 2016. And it, of course, timed with the Trump election. The class of 2020 has had just a wild time, starting with the Trump election and ending with COVID. So, but coming back to the Gibson's thing, it was something that has cast a shadow over the 4 years of my time at Oberlin. So some of the big controversies that have happened has been the ongoing Gibson's case and reporting on that. UAW strikes and UAW problems with UAW workers potentially getting laid off. At Oberlin, we also have had a huge structural deficit that is being managed by our school, and kind of reporting on how liberal arts can become more of a sustainable way for schools or colleges in the United States to run. And then, of course, COVID-19 and how Oberlin is going to handle that.
I think what the one which is relevant to many of our students currently who are planning to go to college, and how higher ed in general could be reimagined. And so the work that Oberlin is doing in that field, and what you mentioned, where do you see this crisis that we are in higher education leading to? Has your work with Oberlin given you some more insight as to different scenarios playing out?
You mean in light of COVID-19 specifically, or liberal arts schools in general?
I think it kind of combines both, because enrollments would get affected, endowments might be sort of plowed into. So yeah, in general too. I'd love to know about the work that you did for understanding liberal arts, the future of liberal arts colleges.
Yeah, I think some of the major things that I saw Oberlin doing that I found extremely positive, that I wish I come to school now that I could do. One of them is a concentration in journalism, and there was a concentration in business. So these are two of the biggest concentrations that I see are coming up in Oberlin and available to incoming students. So kind of looking more at fields that are more concrete than just academic.
So a lot more pragmatic, pre-professional. So sort of changing the liberal arts to not just places where people think and write and research. Okay, so that pre-professionalism.
Pre-professionalism was a good one. We have this thing called winter term, which makes Oberlin very unique. We have a month. It's usually in January. I don't know when it's going to be now, but it's usually in January. We have a month to pursue any project that we want, and I think they're making a lot more opportunities for students, both on campus as well as around the United States, to pursue meaningful projects during that time. And I think the final thing that really stood out to me is career communities. It's one of the first things that I did. I was the first career communities, like in part of the group that did career communities for the first time. It's basically guaranteed funding for any internship that you want to do. During spring semesters, I think they provide you with a list of different companies that are looking for students to hire during the summer. And then during fall, they also have the opportunity to find like unpaid different things that they're interested in doing over the summer, but they can't afford it. And then they provide funding to do that.